everyone, my name is Jane. I go by Princess Etch. I am an Etch A Sketch artist, and today I'm going to tell the story of what might be the worst flight experience I have ever had in my life. So there's going to be a fair amount of backtracking before I begin what made the flight so ridiculous, so I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy me telling a long-winded story about some rough traveling. So, for those not in the know, I have been a professional, full-time Etch A Sketch artist for over 6 years now. This has been my number one and only sustenance in that 6-year period. I bring that up because to be a professional Etch A Sketch artist, there are so many different kinds of things that I have to do. So I do commissioned art, I do live streaming, I sometimes travel, which I'll get into in a moment. I teach workshops, I will go to live events, which is what this story is about, and so much more. There are just so many different things that I do to comprise an annual income. All right, I'll set the stage. In early October, I was reached out to about an event that would take place on Thursday, October 13th. Is that a Thursday or is that a Friday? Let's take a look, actually. Today is the 19th, and that's a Wednesday. So, correct, Thursday, October 13th. One moment. Not sure if I'm going to be jump cutting and all of that stuff because sometimes done is better than perfect, and if I take all the time in the world to, edit the video to its most simplified form, it might take 5 million years for me to put out this video. So if you find me doing things like drinking water, just know that it's just for the sake of making it easier for me to put this content out to you. All right, so setting the stage. A client reaches out to me, asks me if I am available for an event in wine country in California. It's actually in Healdsburg. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but hopefully I might put some little visuals on the screen to help with that. So they reached out to me. Now, less than 2 weeks is very short notice for a traveling event, especially because they were in a rather remote area of the country. They were around 2 hours north of San Francisco or Oakland. And they were interested in hiring multiple artists because they wanted capacity over a short period of time. They were looking to hire an artist for 2 hours, and my capacity for creating live Etch-A-Sketch drawings, which is what they wanted to hire me for, doing portraits of people, was around, I'd say 15 an hour at best, 20 an hour if I'm working only from photos and I'm hardly interacting with the clients that are sitting across from me. But 15 an hour is a solid, high level estimate. So they mentioned that they were interested in hiring 2 artists. So I sent a quote over and I sent over a travel budget. Now, this is the highest travel budget I've ever sent in my life, but I sent over a travel budget of $2,500, which for domestic travel is freaking insane. And that did not include hotels. The client was going to cover hotels. Now, there were cheaper flight options available, but I had chosen my friend Brian to work with me. It was actually amazing that he was able to work with me because about a decade ago, he had done me a major solid by giving me a gig out in Long Island, New York. So this was finally I was able to return the favor, which was really cool. And I was flying myself from Washington, D.C., and my friend Brian from New York City. So it was a game of logic puzzles to figure out how to get both me and Brian to this gig in sensible, humane fashions. So the reason why I say humane is because so many of the flight options I was looking at had ridiculous layovers, were starting at 7 in the morning to fly out, which I try to avoid myself if I can. And they just had really ugly options to get to this remote destination. The remote destination being STS, the Sonoma County Airport, the Charles Schulz Airport. Charles Schulz is the creator of Peanuts, and I'll be honest with you, I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I've never been a huge fan of Peanuts. I know, true blasphemy, I worked for Cedar Fair. I worked at Cedar Point, the flagship amusement park of Cedar Fair, and Peanuts is their mascots. It's their franchise, and I've just never been big on it. So I thought it was pretty cool that there was an airport dedicated to the creator of Peanuts, so I was a little curious about that from an airline enthusiast perspective. But what I wasn't so thrilled about was the fact that it was a pain in the butt to figure out how to get there. So I had been sitting down. It took me hours to figure out a solid way to get me and Brian to this destination. But I figured it out, and I'll describe the flights in detail in a moment. And after pricing it all out, recognizing we were also going to need a rental car, I priced it at $2,500 for 2 round-trip flights and the rental car, essentially, and the Uber we would need to take to our hotel destination. And that was being conservative. That was not being very liberal with the budget. I didn't have a lot of wiggle room there if things went awry, but I figured in the event that things went awry, there was like a little bit of a buffer that I could dip into if we needed an additional Uber or something. Boy, was I wrong. I was so foolish in assuming that this was going to go all right. So I booked the flight, the hotel is taken care of, the contract is signed, the client is a go. This is fantastic. This is the first time I had ever booked a second artist to work with me, but it wasn't done yet. I needed to find a local assistant because to do the live Etch A Sketch portraits that are on pre-preserved Etch A Sketches, meaning I take out the aluminum powder before I begin the drawing, I need somebody to finish the preservation process and package them all up nice and fancy so that I can stay focused on doing the etching and sketching as well as Brian. So I decided this was a stroke of genius. Now, I've been live streaming now for over a year, and thanks to that, I have developed a lovely niche, repetitive audience of people who keep coming back to my stream. So on one night, after I had kind of booked everything and I was still looking for a local assistant, I asked out of the blue, is anybody in my current audience a resident of the wine country region of California? And I got an affirmative from one of my lovely viewers, Stardust. So she was available. And I had coordinated plans for her to help me out at the gig, which just felt fantastic. There were so many moving parts for this. This is by far the most involved I have ever had a coordination for a gig to be. You know, it was the most involved I had ever. There were so many moving parts. There were an incredible amount of moving parts. And it just felt really good to see the puzzle pieces starting to fit together. I felt my stress levels going down. I felt like, all right, I did my homework. I did not pick a budget airline. I would not even consider Frontier or Spirit. Heavens no, I would never fly them for work. I decided to fly United because I've had a long-standing track history with them, and United was fantastic in that they had nonstop flights from both DCA, Reagan National Airport, which is where I was flying out from, and JFK, which is where Brian was flying out from, to arrive in San Francisco the night before the event at almost the exact same time, which felt kismet. So Brian and I would have the same layover, and then we would have one final little puddle jumper plane that was like, a 45-minute flight to Sonoma County, so Santa Rosa. So I figured, all right, and in the event that something goes awry, we're going to be in San Francisco instead of somewhere in the middle of the country. And if push came to shove, we could drive like 2 hours north if we had to. But I wanted to fly us to the final destination because I didn't want us to have to do a 2-hour drive after a cross-country flight. Those are like over 5-hour flights, and the jet lag and all that. I just figured, let's keep it humane, let's keep it simple, let's spend the extra money to provide ourselves the opportunity to rest and relax more before the event instead of having to stress out through San Francisco traffic in a region of the country that both Brian and I have never driven in. Now, those who know me know that I am a very inexperienced driver. In fact, I only got my license earlier this year. I am 30 years old, and I am a very recently licensed human being. So I was particularly not looking forward to the prospect of doing a 2-hour drive in the San Francisco area after a 5+ hour flight. So, anyways, hopefully that kind of explains a little bit of the methodology and rationality behind why I picked the flights that I chose to get us to the destination. Also worth noting, we had about a 2-hour layover, which is generous, which is usually reasonable, especially for what is considered a moderately more dependable airline like United. So there are two very important things that I did not take into consideration seriously enough when booking these flights. I did consider them, but I figured the probability was low, and if the worst case scenario occurred, Brian and I could improvise. One of the two things that I did not consider enough was fog. And the reason why I did not take fog into serious consideration is because United, not United, Google Flights, when I booked the flights, usually shows a bit of information regarding if a flight is often delayed. And for the flights to and from STS, that's the Sonoma County Airport, the teeny tiny little final destination, it did not give me any warning messages about the flight being consistently delayed. So I thought, okay, that's a green flag. And the only red flag I got was that the departing flight, when Brian and I were to both return home, said that the San Francisco flights, which would be nonstop from San Francisco to both of our respective final destinations, is often delayed by 30 plus minutes, which is not the end of the world, right? That's fine. I can live with that. I can live with the 30 plus minute delay from the layover connecting flight. The big problem is if you're getting a 2-hour delay from the origin flight. All right, needless to say. So, Brian and I head to the airport. This is, by the way, not even accounting for all of the problems I had with preserving the Etch A Sketches before the event. That's a story in itself, but I'll truncate it before I get into the flying portion of the video, which I know I'm already like 5 minutes in, but that's how it goes. The preservation of these Etch A Sketches was the worst experience I ever had. It was my first time trying to preserve the newest iteration of the Spin Master Pocket Etch A Sketch. Let me grab one of these. So I've got, here we go. Here's an Etch A Sketch here. It's got my friend Sunny's OC on it. They have changed the configuration of this Etch A Sketch very, very moderately over the years, and each configuration has been to my ultimate detriment for one reason or another. So the knobs are not as easily removable as they used to be, and apparently the internal mechanics are ever so moderately different than they have been in the past, which was very, very bad because I ended up breaking like 10 Etch A Sketches trying to preserve them. So that is literally just $50 down the drain doing my least favorite thing on the planet, which was infuriating. And everything about the process was just excruciatingly stressful. And honestly, when I finished the preservation of these Etch A Sketches, I felt like, I don't know if I even want to do this line of work anymore because it was such a horrific, frustrating experience to deal with. And it's something I'm interested in outsourcing. That's a different thing for a different time, for a different place, for a different gig. But at this point, I did not have the opportunity or the choice to outsource the preservation of the Etch A Sketches before I went to the event. I digress. All right, fast forward. It is October 12th. It is a Wednesday. It is exactly 1 week from today. I get dropped off particularly early at the airport because I am a nervous little human being, and I get particularly stressed out about the prospect of missing a flight, especially because these flights were $2,500, and if I were to miss this flight, I would be out a disgusting amount of money. So I figure, you know what? Better excruciatingly early than just on time. It is better for my just peace of mind. So I had packed everything the night before. I was ready to go. My lovely friend drove me to the airport. Bless her soul. She is a precious human being for doing such an amazing favor for me. I am not very close to that airport. It took over an hour to get there. And I arrived still earlier than anticipated at around 1 p.m. The flight was set to depart at 6:20 p.m. So I had like 5 hours to kill. Now, I have TSA PreCheck. If there's any piece of advice I could give to any frequent flyer who lives in the United States who's watching this video, purchase TSA PreCheck. It is worth its weight in gold. It is worth it. So I had PreCheck. I checked into the airport at DCA. I checked my one piece of luggage. I had one piece of luggage and one carry-on. If I could have, I would have truncated everything to one carry-on bag, but it was not physically possible. So under most circumstances, especially when dealing with layovers, I do everything in my power to not have checked luggage. I do not enjoy the experience of doing checked luggage, but this was a circumstance where I did not have a choice, and this will come up later in the story, I promise. So I check my luggage. I get inside the main concourse of the airport, and I chillax. And I even host a live stream. There are maybe some people here on TikTok who have been on many of my live streams who were there on that live stream. And those of you who were there in the live stream can attest to the fact that I was chill, I was relaxed, I was zen, I was ready for a good event the following night. It's also important to note that the event took place from 9:30 to 11:30 p.m. California time, which, with accounting for jet lag, would feel like 12:30 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. I'm a night owl, so I could deal with that, but that's worth noting. All right, so I am at the airport, and it gets to around 6 p.m. Now, at this point, Brian also had an evening flight departing from JFK that would be taking him to San Francisco. So he was on his plane. He was boarded. He texted me. He's peacing out. He is on the way to San Francisco. Fantastic. One down, one to go. So I'm sitting at my airport, and I'm chilling. And around 6 p.m. comes around, and everybody's doing that thing where we're all, actually, it was like before 6, because boarding usually starts at least half an hour before. So like 5:30, 5:45, people are like doing the hover thing where we're all kind of waiting for the boarding groups to begin, and people are beginning to stand now. And at about 6 p.m., we get an announcement at the podium, and the employee at the podium says, "The flight is delayed until 9 p.m. The first of many problems, and thus the dominoes begin to fall. So the flight's delayed to 9 p.m. At this point, it's not going to arrive until 11:35 p.m. San Francisco time. Somewhere around that time. Well, that is definitely well beyond my connecting flight's departure time, which was, I believe, supposed to be, let me see, I have my ticket right here. Departure was supposed to be at 10:55 p.m. and boarding was supposed to begin at 10:30 p.m. from San Francisco to STS. Well, the flight was delayed till 9 p.m. because the employee at the podium told us that the plane that was assigned to us had a broken piece of weather equipment and needed to be replaced. When the flight got delayed to 9 p.m., I knew unequivocally at that point that I was not making my connecting flight. And for an ever so brief moment, I got really choked up. And the anxiety just went, whoo! But I took a deep breath. I resisted the impulse to burst into tears. And I just remained calm and began what would be a series of text messages to Brian, knowing he would not receive them until he left the aircraft that was taking him to San Francisco. So I knew I was going to miss my connecting flight, and there was nothing I could do about it. So as time passed, I kind of just hung out in my gate. 7 p.m. rolls around, 8 p.m. rolls around. The employee at the podium goes back on the intercom, makes another announcement saying, "All right, everybody, there's going to be a little bit more of a delay. The flight is now scheduled to depart at 1 in the morning." Of course, everybody in our group collectively groans. which means that we are now not scheduled to arrive in San Francisco until 3:33 in the morning. Obviously, extremely well after the departure of my connecting flight. At this point, I am stuck in San Francisco. And at this point, I'm concerned that this plane's not even going to take off. So United delayed my flight for 7 hours because they couldn't find somebody to come and replace the equipment. They were looking for a part, they were looking for an employee, and at that point, the delays had been so long that they needed to let go of our crew, and now we would need a replacement crew, assuming we could even find a replacement crew to get us to depart at 1 a.m. So at this point, I'm really starting to worry because, like I said, I'm stuck on the other side of the country. Now, one word of advice to anybody who travels for work. I mean, if you do travel for work, then you already know this. But to anybody who's ever thinking about starting to travel for work, depart at least 1 day in advance of the event. The event was not scheduled to take place until 9:30 p.m., but as you can see, there were unforeseen travel circumstances, and thank God I had the presence of mind to book these flights the day before. Because if I was trying to fly a day of, and this was like a morning flight that was supposed to get me out to California on time, I'd be SOL. I would be missing that gig. And not only would I be missing that gig, but Brian wouldn't be able to do anything because I had all the supplies with me. I had the preserved Etch A Sketches. I had all the things that we needed to set up for the event. Everything was in my possession. And he was just showing up with his extra set of hands to fulfill the terms of my contract. So, at this point, I have no choice but to accept the fact that my flight was departing 7 hours late. And after a while, it's around 8:30. I decide I'm going to go wait in line at the counter to talk to the employee at the podium to see if he can at least hook me up with meal vouchers or something. I'm spending an extra 7 hours here and I am getting hungry. I need food. I was expecting to already be on this plane. So I go up to the podium and I said, hey, is there any way that I could procure a meal voucher due to these unforeseen flight delays? And the employee was like, oh, they haven't given you any yet? Like, no, they haven't given me any yet. Have you made an announcement saying, all right, everybody, come on up. Come get your meal vouchers. You know I haven't gotten any yet. Like, what even is that? Are you kidding me? Like, I just remember thinking, like, are you really seriously being flippant right now? Like, no, I haven't gotten a meal voucher. And the only reason why I'm getting one is because I had the audacity to ask for one. And so thankfully he hooked me up. It's my first time ever getting meal vouchers from an airline. This is one of many reasons why it is beneficial to fly at least something a step up from the ultra low cost carriers, being airlines like Spirit and Frontier. Because when things go wrong with Spirit and Frontier, you're not going to have as much to work with. They're just not going to be as amenable. It's going to be much more of a nightmare to deal with customer service. And trust me, this was already enough of a nightmare to deal with United's customer service. So I get my meal vouchers. I have just enough time. No, this is after 9 at this point. So most of the restaurants are closed at this airport at this time. So I basically go for a run because I'm always concerned that they're going to update the departure time to be earlier. I find a restaurant that's open until 10. I place a to-go order and I use up both of those meal vouchers and treat myself to a decent meal. So I head back to the gate and I continue camping, crossing my fingers, hoping and praying that this flight at least departs to San Francisco tonight. Because if I can get to San Francisco, I am at that point geographically close to my final destination of Hillsburg, California. I, if I have to, can rent a car, drive that car 2 hours north. I'll figure it out. I had already instructed Brian to follow through with the final flight. I'll meet him at the hotel, get a good night's sleep. I'll see you when I see you. I'll figure it out. So eventually the plane does board. They give us a new aircraft. They find us a new crew. So they couldn't even replace the part. And it's just another example of how badly the whole airline industry is impacted globally by COVID because United let go of at least 20% of their workforce due to COVID cutbacks. And you see the domino effect happening so hard when it comes to that. That's, when there is a problem with the plane, they need to find a repair guy. They need to find the equipment, and there's supply chain issues, and there's underemployment happening right now, and all the employees are overworked and underpaid, and the staffing is shorted. And so when there's a problem, there's not enough people at the podium to handle the sheer volume of people waiting in line, and it takes way longer, yada, yada, yada. So I get on the plane. The flight departs. It arrives at 3:30 in the morning. About an hour before my flight is landed in San Francisco, I learned that, by the way, our flight was supposed to have outlets, but because they gave us a new plane, there were no outlets, which would have been fantastic to know, but thankfully my phone battery was pretty good. Well, I find out about an hour before we land that United provides free Wi-Fi for text messaging services. So not traditional texting, I should have said messaging services, but IP-based messaging services like Facebook Messenger, which is incredible. So I saw that Brian was marked online on Facebook, and I thought that was pretty weird. I figured by the time he made it to the hotel that he would be super tired and zonk out, but I thought, okay, maybe he's just chilling at the hotel. So I start messaging him and say, hey, my flight is scheduled to land in about an hour. I just found out that I have access to this messaging service through the aircraft. And he said, I'm stuck in San Francisco. He's stuck in San Francisco, guys. So what happened to him is arguably worse than what happened to me, because he arrived on time. He had about a 2-hour layover, which I was supposed to spend with him, but he just chilled alone. And he boarded the final aircraft. So he had his final flight, the little puddle jumper from San Francisco to STS. So he gets on that plane. The plane takes off on time. It goes all the way to Santa Rosa, and it does this. Like, I don't know how many times, but Brian said they tried landing like a few times, and it won't touch the ground. And why, you might ask? Because of fog. So they try, and they have no choice but to turn around and go all the way back to San Francisco. Poor Brian. Poor Brian. And so I'm learning this information as I'm on my flight to San Francisco, and I'm just like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I'll be meeting you soon. I arrive at like 3:30 in the morning, and he said, great, I'm stuck outside the airport, because he left the main region of the airport and was basically camping at baggage claim with his bag, and he's tired and I'm tired and we're jet lagged, and it feels like, when I'm supposed to land, it's 3:30 in the morning. It feels like 6:30 in the morning to me when I land. And you can only imagine the quality of sleep that one could get on an unexpected red-eye after a 7-hour delay. I've never been one to be able to sleep on a plane. Brian's never been one to be able to sleep on a plane. So we are both worse for wear. So I finally land in San Francisco, and here comes the next speed bump. So I had spoken with an employee and expressed my concern that I wouldn't be able to retrieve my luggage once I arrived in San Francisco. And I said, I really want to retrieve it because I'm not going to make my connecting flight. And they were trying to book me on another flight the following morning to get me to my final destination of STS. And I said, I don't want that. I'd rather go to San Francisco and then figure it out from there, because I'd rather be geographically close to my final destination than roll the dice yet again on another series of flights with a layover where I don't depart until the following day. Plus, I can't just easily go home right now. I'm over an hour away from home. It is very late at night. It's almost 1 in the morning when I'm in DCA still, when I'm in Washington, D.C. And I don't want to ask Kyle to do the 2-hour plus round trip in the middle of the night. He has a huge work meeting that's coming up the following week. He's got a lot on his plate. I am determined to get out of the East Coast. I need to get to the West Coast as soon as possible. So, despite the fact that United was trying to work with me and give me another flight through another airline, I might add, I was determined to take the flight to San Francisco. So I get to San Francisco. I meet up with Brian. We do that we do that thing where we both had a long day and we give each other that hug, and you just know it's been a long one for both of us. And so I walk up to baggage claim and I said, hey, I talked to an employee at DCA, and that's Reagan Airport, and he told me that I should be able to retrieve my luggage here since there's no way it's going to make it to its final destination tonight. In theory, it's going to make its first stop. I know it's on the plane. Can I get my bag? Because I don't see it on the carousel. And they're like, yeah, we can't find it. Here's the problem. Now, I have the most important possessions that I could possibly need in my carry-on. That's how I do things. All of the preserved Etch A Sketches as well as my business outfit are living in my carry-on. The checked luggage has all of the ancillary things that would be a real freaking bummer to have to buy at the last minute in a region of the country that I've never been to before, especially because I had to cancel my rental car. That will be coming up soon. So I had to cancel my rental car because I wouldn't be able to make it to pick up the rental car on time from the destination that I booked it from. So I'll get there. So they can't give me my bag. They don't know when it's going to show up, but United booked me a hotel. They gave me options, and because it was a mechanical issue, it was on United. They said they would refund the last leg of my flight, even though the flight ended up getting canceled. Brian's flight won't get refunded because it was canceled due to weather, even though mine was too, but it's United's fault that I didn't make that connecting flight despite the fact that it was canceled because it was a mechanical issue. So because it was a mechanical issue for me and it was United's fault, United provided for me a hotel room. They did not do the same for Brian because it was weather that canceled his flight. So I said, Brian, I got a hotel. And Brian gave me the first smile I'd seen the whole time I'd seen him. And we decided to talk to the luggage agent, try to figure out if we should just wait it out until I could grab my bag or if we should come back the following day. And they said, you should come back because if your checkout is early, you're going to want to get as much sleep as you can. And I gave him my bag number and I crossed my fingers and Brian and I, whisked away right to the hotel. So we don't get there until about 4:30, and we sleep, I think, for maybe, I think I got about 2 hours of sleep. Brian, maybe 3, but I'm sure it was interrupted. So there's like a pull-out sofa. I sleep on the sofa. He gets the bed. They didn't have a room with 2 beds. That's fine. So when I get to the hotel, that is when I learned that United had booked me on a flight for Portland at 8:35 in the morning. So at this point, like I said, it's about 5, maybe 5:30 in the morning when I'm trying to figure out what's going on. United had, without my consent, provided a new itinerary for me to get to my final destination of STS. Well, I didn't want that. So I had to use this agent app, this live agent app, which I had used earlier in the night, and spent a good half hour just trying. By the way, I didn't have my laptop with me, only my cell phone. I'm glad I didn't bring my laptop because it would have been dead weight, but it would have been a little more convenient to do some of this stuff with a laptop. Whatever, not the end of the world. So I had to explain to the agent, listen, I don't want to take this flight. I don't want this to compromise the fact that I should get a refund on my final leg of the flight that I didn't make. And I'm going to find a way to furnish my own transportation to STS, to the final airport destination that I originally wanted to go to. Well, he told me that they should be able to reimburse me for the shuttle. There is a shuttle bus that takes 2.5 hours from SFO to STS, or they could pay for an Uber, but he wouldn't tell me if they would reimburse me for the entire Uber. They said that they could reimburse me for at least a part of the Uber after giving me the estimate. So he wouldn't give me an answer on that, which made me uncomfortable. And I don't even know if there was a possibility that Brian and I would even be able to find somebody willing to take an Uber fare that is a 2-hour journey, you know? So I decided I didn't like that option either. So the following morning, I was able to get them to cancel the flights because I didn't want those flights. I didn't ask for those flights, and I didn't want it to jeopardize the rest of my itinerary. So I got maybe 2 hours of sleep at best. We wake up at like 7. I wake up earlier than 7 because I'm so wired. We head over to the airport, and I cross my fingers in the hopes that I am going to get my luggage. And I'm just going to look at the time right now. It is 34 minutes into the story, and we're not even halfway through. Let's see if I can make it a little bit quicker. So we head to the airport, and hallelujah, the first victory of the trip. I see my bag from across the way. I go and grab it. I tell Brian, all right, thank you. Can you watch my bags? I'm going to go upstairs, go to United customer service, and I'm not even dealing with that reimbursement BS because I don't trust that United is going to actually reimburse this unless I go through like a horrible experience of trying to submit receipts and waiting 5 weeks for a check to get sent in the mail or some BS like that. I think United owes both of us a ride to our final destination. And there's this very dependable shuttle that takes that departs every hour on the half-hour mark from SFO to my final destination airport, STS. I also had to cancel my car that night. So before I went to bed, I canceled those 2 flights from Portland, SFO Portland, Portland, STS. And then I had to cancel my car because the car was booked in Healdsburg, which is where my hotel was, which is about 15, 20 minutes north. It's very close geographically to where our hotel was, so I figured it wouldn't be a big deal to try to get to there. But the hours of that place were 9 a.m. to noon. I think Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon or something like that. Maybe 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to noon. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to pick up my car, but I figured that's okay. I'll see if I could book a car from the airport now, because originally we were supposed to arrive at the airport at like midnight the night before. And none of the car rental places were going to be open because it's a teeny tiny airport. So I figured that's fine. We'll get a car from there, or we'll just Uber to the hotel, figure it out from there. So I go to customer service and I explain the situation, and I have to go fetch Brian. So Brian comes back with me. We're talking to customer service. They, after a lot of discussion of everything that I just told you about the 7-hour delay and the canceled flights, they provide me and Brian with tickets for the shuttle bus. They're like $42 a piece. So they print them out for us and they paid for them, which was like great, cool. We saved you a lot of money, United Airlines, because you don't have to fly us to the destination anymore. And you saved us a lot of trouble because they were trying to book Brian on the next departing flight to STS, which was like the same exact time. It was like an 11 p.m. departure, which is no bueno because that would have been after the gig started. So, all right, next victory of the day. So we promptly go and wait for this shuttle. At this point, I think it's around noon. Like, it had been a long day. Maybe we slept in until like 10, but I still only got like 2 hours of sleep. So I also said, can you hook Brian up with some meal vouchers? United had given me additional meal vouchers with my hotel, but Brian hadn't gotten any. And so she had to call a supervisor, and the supervisor had to give the okay for that. But I am so grateful that they did that because, man, Brian was put through the ringer too, and weather wasn't his fault either. And we're saving United money. Just do us a solid, you know? So they gave us meal vouchers. So I had already had $30 from day one. I got an additional $30 for the hotel, and then Brian just got $30. So altogether, United has given us $90 in meal vouchers and $84 in these tickets to get from the shuttle bus to the final destination. So we get on the shuttle. We're both very tired. Brian and I hardly talk because we're both like zombies. We try to relax a little bit. And I have a lot of stuff to do, so I have to figure out a way to book a rental car to see if we can get a rental car to get us around wine country, because that is very geographically distant, all of the destinations. I need to figure out how to get to the gig. I need to figure out how to get back to the hotel. And the most important thing is that I have a 7 a.m. departure from STS for both me and Brian tomorrow from STS to SFO. Then we have the same kind of 2-hour layover situation, hour and a half, and then SFO back to our respective destinations. So the following morning on the 14th of October, Friday, we are scheduled to both depart at 7 in the morning. I'm not confident we could get an Uber in that remote region of California that early in the morning, and there are no other options that I could think of beyond a rental car, and I had to cancel my rental car. So I started calling. I think there were 5 rental car facilities at the airport, and I figured that's fine. We could just get one at the airport. Nope. Every single one I called said that they have no vehicles available. They are out of cars because they have a huge influx of people who require transportation. I'm sure we weren't the only people who had our flights canceled on us due to fog. So there are way too many people and not enough vehicles. So at that point, I start calling rental car facilities. I figure we can take an Uber to our hotel that afternoon. That should be no problem. There should be available Ubers, but maybe we should book a dependable cab service to get us back. So I call a cab service that I find on Google. And he tells me $80 to take us on a 12-minute drive from the hotel to the airport at like 5 in the morning. And I was surprised by that number. I thought for a 12-minute drive, $80, that's kind of a lot. And so I said, well, like, that's more than I was expecting. He's like, well, how much did you think? And I said, well, maybe like $40. And he hung up on me. And that was the beginning of the next omen, I suppose. So I spoke with my assistant that I was going to work with, Stardust, and she told me that she and her partner who was going to be with her could pick me and Brian up from the hotel and take us to the gig venue, which is like less than 10 minutes away. And I said, fantastic, great to hear, happy that's going to happen. So I just needed to figure out that last puzzle piece of how to get us, me and Brian, from the hotel to STS for that morning departure the following morning. So we get to the airport, another little victory. We had our United meal vouchers. They expire within 24 hours. So Brian and I decided to eat at a restaurant adjacent to the destination airport, which accepted United meal vouchers. We just used those up. We have a good meal. We deserve a good meal. And I walk into the car rental place. Yeah, no cars available. One person told me that it could be like $200 if we come back in 2 hours. I can't easily come back in 2 hours. That's not going to happen. So I furnish an Uber for me and Brian to go 12 minutes north to our hotel. We check into the hotel. Thankfully, the hotel didn't take away our room because it was part of the room block that the client had booked. So that was good. And we both have our own hotel rooms, and they are beautiful. And the concierge gives me the contact info for a driver that's super dependable that she would recommend. So I go upstairs. The first thing I have to do is try to figure out that cab because we have to depart the following morning. We need to figure that out ASAP. So I call that service. It is $85. And so I say, let me think about it. And then I call 2 other services, both of which say we have no drivers or cars available at that time. There is way too much demand and we are not available. So I call back that $85 lady who was super nice and I say, I'll take it. I'll take it right up the butt because I don't have a choice at this point. I know we are in Extortionville, USA. I know it's a supply and demand business. This is capitalism at its finest, but I will take the $85 12-minute cab ride. I'll do it. I don't have a choice. And you know what? I'll tip too because I'm not a monster. So she sent me the payment link and I pre-tipped because I was out of cash at this point. I'd already used all my like petty cash for tips with the driver, for the other hotel, yada, yada. So yeah, I'm like $95 out of my pocket. I had canceled that other car. I don't even know if that other car, like the rental car for Enterprise, I probably got charged for that too. So any money that I had possibly done as a buffer for my $2,500 travel budget is gone. It's gone. We're in the hole now. So whatever. We made it to Healdsburg. We did it. We made it to the destination city, and the gig is scheduled to happen in like 3 hours. I had just enough time to book the car, and I had just enough time to take a shower and change out of the clothes that I've been wearing for 2 days now and get ready, put on makeup. I actually wore makeup. It's kind of a big deal. And I was ready and I was zen and I figured, all right, I have put the puzzle pieces together. We are good to go. I go to the gig. The gig is the number one concern of mine to go correctly. It is at a gorgeous venue. The client was fantastic. I do not have a single iota of a complaint about anything occurring at the gig. It was everything I ever could have wanted it to be. And I am so grateful that Brian and I were able to make it to the destination. Oh my gosh, that was the number one most important concern, and that part went off without a hitch. So to the client, nothing about anything I've said in this video has anything to do with you. You've been an absolute rock star. Every problem that I've had has had everything to do with air travel. So the gig goes great. In fact, we even get an extra half hour of work. So we clock out at midnight. So it was supposed to be 9:30 to 11:30, but we clock out at midnight. Now, Brian and I, we had to schedule the car for 4:45 in the morning, so we need to get up by like 4:15, 4:30 at the latest. So we are guaranteed to get maybe 4 hours of sleep at best, but 4 hours of sleep is better than like the 2 hours we had the night before, so we'll take what we can get. So I had we all packed up, got ready to go. My lovely assistant and her partner helped pack up everything. We get in the car, we head back to the hotel, and they say, "Hey, I didn't realize that you were departing from SFO," because we told them the whole story about the whole delays we had with the flights and everything already. And she could express concern about there being additional fog, and I was worried about that too, but I just dropped $95 on the cab, and I think it was a little bit of a sunken cost fallacy that I was dealing with at that moment, that like maybe I wouldn't be able to make it on time, like, or not that I wouldn't be able to make it on time, but like I'd already dropped the $95, like it has to work, right? At this point, like that STS flight has to depart. It has to. And well, I'm so grateful that we worked until midnight, and I'm so grateful that we got to the hotel when we did, because Brian checks his phone. We are at the point where we are hugging and saying goodbye and like ready to enter the hotel and get a few hours of sleep when Brian checks his phone and it says that our STS to SFO flight is canceled. And guess why? 'Cause of fog! Of course it's fog! Here's me being an idiot from the Midwest who now lives on the East Coast. I've never dealt with fog! So my lovely, lovely assistant had previously offered to allow me and Brian to crash at their place, and they would take us to San Francisco if we wanted to just completely circumvent the STS to SFO flight, the tiny airport to San Francisco flight. And at first I was resistant. I said I would think about it throughout the night, but as soon as I got that flight cancellation text, which I received as well, I said, "Are you still willing to let us take you up on that wonderful, amazing offer that you made?" And they said, "Absolutely. We would absolutely love to be a help to you." And I said, "You have no idea how much you're saving us right now, because otherwise we would have had to get the 4:45 a.m. departure to take the first shuttle that takes 2.5 hours out to SFO. And that was like the only shuttle we could take because they only depart once an hour. That would have guaranteed that we would have gotten to the airport on time for our 9 a.m. departures. Like we would want to get to the airport by 7:30 in the morning, like at the latest." And so Brian and I, instead of going to our hotel rooms and going to bed that night, immediately went to our hotel rooms, gathered all of our possessions, and checked out. And we got in the car with my lovely assistant, who I just met for the first time, who had so kindly offered her house as a place to crash. We're about, it takes like an hour and a half to get to their house, and then they're like an hour away from the airport. And about an hour into the drive, now at this point, I have to cancel more things. I tried to cancel the cab and I couldn't. And I was talking to United with the live agent text messaging thing because it wouldn't let me or Brian check into our San Francisco flight. It said, "Please see a gate agent," which is a scary message to get. But I was trying to see if it was possible for the live agent on the phone to circumvent that stupid message and just check us into our flights. We know we can't make the STS to SFO flight. It got canceled. So can you just do us a solid and let us check into the final leg of our respective flights? But of course, it wasn't that simple. So about an hour into the drive, after I had an unsuccessful attempt with United yet again, I realized, oh my God, we had 2 hotel rooms. We could have just shared those hotel rooms and then gotten a few hours of sleep and then departed directly from there and gone to San Francisco together. But of course, it's a thought I had in retrospect, and it ended up being totally fine. I was provided a lovely place to sleep, considering it was completely last minute and unexpected, and Brian had an air mattress. God rest his soul. It was still an amazing accommodation given the circumstance, but I don't know how well he slept, just because, you know, sometimes air mattresses are a little tricky, but like still incredible, incredible, incredible offering. Do not want to in any way critique any degree of the amazing, wonderful accommodations that were given to us that night, and they were free and they were perfect. So thank you so much, Stardust. Seriously, seriously. I think that both Brian and I, the only reason we got to sleep that night is because of you. So we get up at, I think, 5 in the morning? Somewhere around there. We depart, we get to the airport by around 7, and in a true testament to how amazing Stardust is, she and her partner insist on parking at the airport, joining us in the airport, and making sure that we can check into our flight before they depart. Incredible. So so incredibly sweet of them. And also, Stardust gave me an amazing, beautiful gift, which honestly, I should share it right now. I'll save the message for maybe my live stream. But like, this is something she had made months in advance. And like, I'm like looking at my camera viewfinder. This is me in my like designed Princess Etch costume that I made like a few years ago. It is gorgeous. And it's this like beautiful, I think this is ceramic. This was a gift given to me. Like, I was like on the verge of tears. Like the amount of kindness that Brian and I collectively received from Stardust and her partner, unparalleled. Like, I would not have gotten to I don't know if I would have even made it to San Francisco the following day if it wasn't for Stardust. Oh my gosh. Even now, I'm like really like letting that sink in, just how in dire need of help that Brian and I were. Like, we couldn't have gotten an Uber at that time from that remote region of the country. Like, we would have been sitting ducks. We would have been stuck in our hotel. We would have been SOL. And so we had, we stayed there. We get to the hotel. Finally, it takes 3 employees looking at one monitor to check Brian into the flight. It was like such a nightmare. Finally, Brian checks into his flight. He is off like a rocket. He doesn't have TSA pre-check, so he needs to get through security ASAP to get to his flight. So, very busy airport in the morning. You would not expect 7 in the morning to be this poppin', but it is San Francisco. It is a large airport. And because of COVID, TSA is understaffed too. So, oh my gosh. So, finally, he gets checked in. He's off like a rocket. Then it's my turn. I get checked in. I give Stardust and their partner quick hugs, and I am off like a rocket. But I'm more relaxed because I'm like, it's TSA pre-check. This is why I buy pre-check. Nope. The longest line I have ever seen in my 5+ years of having pre-check. I think I've had pre-check now for like 7 years and never in all of my time. There was one time at LaGuardia that it was outside of the queues. This was like blocks outside of the queues. Just kept going and going and going. And it was ridiculous. And I kept asking people like, you're pre-check, right? And they're like, yeah, I know, right? And I kept going and going and going. Finally get to the back of the line. Thankfully, the nice thing about pre-check is that the line goes faster because you don't have to take off your shoes, you don't have to remove your laptop from your bag, and everybody that's in that line is presumably a frequent flyer and knows how to go through security, unlike a first-time flyer, a family of 12 with like 5 screaming children or like 3 dogs, right? Like that's just how it goes. So I get through security. I make it to my airport. I have my last United meal voucher. I have one $15 voucher yet. I run to a place, grab breakfast, buy 2 donuts, 2 milks. I go for Brian. I run to his gate. I try to give him a final goodbye, but he had just boarded the aircraft. So, alas, I did my best. But thank God Brian had made his final flight home. So, I go home. I get on my plane. It departs on time. And we are off like a rocket, and I make it to DCA, and Kyle picks me up from the airport, and then I go home. And the story's not over yet. You'd think it would be over. But we get home, and I decided that, like, I wanted to eat some dinner. I wanted to go out because we had made that plan before I went on this whole trip. And, of course, I was, like, a zombie, but I needed nourishment. So we went to Olive Garden. They said it was a 40-minute wait, and there were screaming children inside. I said, no can do, no bueno. So we go to, there's a Bob Evans next door, and I was like, let's just walk over there. I just require food. And so I look at the menu, and I look at Kyle, and I said, listen, it's been a long few days. A lot of things have gone wrong, and I need to draw a line in the sand. And I know it looks arbitrary, but I need this. I want to order one thing on this menu. One. I want the pick 2, you choose options. There was like a half of a BLT, and there was a cup of soup. And so there was a very specific kind of a cup of soup that I wanted. And it was the cheddar potato soup, whatever that was. And I said to Kyle, if they are out of this soup, we are leaving. I will not eat at this establishment. I can't do it. And I suggested another place that we really like, and he was actually pretty excited about that. So I think he secretly wanted them to not have it because he wasn't really keen on Bob Evans anyways. And so the waitress gets to our table. And Kyle looks at me. He goes, you order first. Because it's like he knows what's coming. And I said, hello, I would like this and this. And the waitress, as if on cue, says, well, unfortunately, we are out of that soup, but we are happy to provide substitutions. And I said, lady. I didn't say lady. I didn't say that at all. I don't know why I just said lady there. I said, I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's been a very long few days, and I just got off a plane, and I am very tired, and I totally understand that you don't have this soup, but we have to go. Thank you for serving us, and I'm sorry to have wasted your time. And I stand up, and Kyle stands up with me, and the waitress, who's very kind, she collects the silverware, and she says, I'm so sorry, we're out of stock on it. And I said, that is totally okay. I understand. And we leave that restaurant and we go to the other one, and I had the best sandwich I've had in weeks. It was incredible. It was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. And Kyle was very happy, and this restaurant that we love serves free soft serve ice cream, and it's the first time the machine was working and he was able to get it, and it was perfect. And then I go home, and then I sleep for like 11 hours, and then I wake up and I'm not feeling so hot, and I get a text from Brian, who tells me that he tested positive for COVID. He tested positive for COVID. No. Oh no. Oh no. So I'm like, oh God, I just spent all this time with Kyle, and I might have made him sick. And my assistant. So I text my assistant. I'm like, I am so sorry to text you this, but I'm so sorry. And I, at this point, it's Monday. Okay, so it's like 2 days later I get that message. And I'm ill. So I'm thinking, my God, I have COVID. Long story short, 2 COVID tests later, and Kyle had a big work thing coming up. I am not COVID positive, so I feel so freaking bad for Brian. But thankfully, I am okay. I am feeling better now. This is the first day that I felt good. So we are 1 week later from the departure. It was a cold for me. It wasn't COVID. And I just got ill from the stress of the travel, all of the arrangements being needed to be made, and all the changes I made, and all of that. And all the stress before the event, and the lack of sleep, of course, and just being exposed to a gajillion billion people. And I'm just so incredibly grateful that I didn't give Kyle COVID. That was my number one fear and concern. His big old fancy schmancy thing he had to do at work is past. He is doing fine. He is safe. I have been quarantining from him since my return once I learned that information. But at this point, I am feeling better. As you can probably tell, I'm not feeling ill at this moment. I'm definitely on the road to recovery. So anyways, last final shout out. I'm going to put it in the description in case I don't do any editing in this video whatsoever, just to put it out. But final shout out to Brian. I would like to share his amazing social media. He's been doing really cool urban sketching. So I want to give him a shout out. So I'll include that Instagram link in the profile. And to everybody who's been watching, this is a 57-minute video according to the timestamp on my recording app. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed hearing a tale of me blathering on about a frustrating flight experience. I still have yet to receive a refund from United for at least that one leg of that one flight that I missed due to their mechanical issue, even though it got canceled anyways. I doubt I'll receive refunds on those round trip flights from SFO to STS for both me and Brian, but at least I will get some degree of compensation. If there are any final takeaways that I would want to say regarding this, it's that flying right now is not good. It was so much better in 2019. I think it's going to take years for things to get back to a semblance of what they were before. So much of the workforce has been cut, and the airline industry is just limping. It's not a good time to be in the traveling business. A lot of people said, well, you must be hating United now. I definitely am less likely to book United going forward because I got firsthand experience of the ramifications of all of their employee cutbacks. And I don't know if other airlines had to take as deep of hits. At this point, I'm going to research further which airlines have been doing the best since COVID, at least when it comes to necessary business travel. Like, I don't want to roll the dice on that. I want the best probabilities I can for on time and legitimate actual departures instead of cancellations. I've been flying United for over a decade now, probably, and I've only ever had one other cancellation. So with that said, I do think this is the new normal. To anybody watching, if you don't have TSA PreCheck and you live in the United States, I highly encourage you to get it, especially because TSA security is like so bad right now, and it's probably going to take way longer than it should for you to get that background check interview. So put that on the calendar as soon as possible. And yeah, it was, when I was in the moment, I was zen for a lot of it. I was stressed, but I wasn't freaking out. I never cried. I never had a breakdown. I never got angry and like tense. And I think the reason why is because I had done everything in my power to plan for every contingency that was within my control. And I think I did everything that I could have done right. If there's anything, of course, I wouldn't have done in retrospect, it definitely would have been booking those flights to STS. Knowing what I know now about fog, I will avoid that going forward. I will just do the drive, take the shuttle, figure it out. I think driving and renting a car straight from SFO was the best option, but, you know, those are things I know now in retrospect. So anyways, this is a story that I had been not wanting to tell on stream because I knew I would repeat myself a million times. So to anybody who wants to know all of this stuff, you probably just watched this whole video, and I hope that gives you an interesting glimpse into what it's like to conduct and do your own travel for work during not even a post-COVID world, but in 2022. So thank you to everybody for watching, and I look forward to maybe telling you guys some more little strange stories like this in the future. We'll see how much this gets edited. I hope you guys enjoy the final product, whatever it looks like. And as I always like to say at the end of my live streams, let me hover my mouse over the end button here. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day and night wherever you happen to be in the world, and as always, 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 you could be anywhere on the internet, and you just chose to spend an hour with me, and I never want to take that for granted. That's pretty incredible. It is the World Wide Web after all, and of everywhere in the world, you're here with me, and that's super cool. So thank you for listening to my story, and I hope to catch you as an audience member on a future YouTube video or live stream. All right, everybody. Bye.